Hello everyone, welcome to our channel where we make the Bible easy to understand for everyone. In this video, we're going to look at Esther chapter 4 verse 16. Now, if you're not familiar with the book of Esther, let me quickly summarize it for you. The story takes place in ancient Persia and is about a Jewish woman named Esther who becomes the queen of the empire after winning a beauty contest. But she keeps her identity as a Jew hidden from the king. Meanwhile, there is a man named Haman who is the king's right-hand man, and he hates the Jews. He convinces the king to issue a decree that all the Jews throughout the empire must be wiped out. And so Esther has to come out of hiding and convince King Xerxes to change his mind. Now, in order to do that, she invites the king and Haman to a banquet, and she waits until the king is completely drunk, and then reveals herself to him as a Jew. She tells him that she never slept with him, because she was still a virgin, and never told him she was a Jew. And then she lays out the evil plot that Haman concocted against the Jews and begs the king to stop it. And amazingly, the king sees how drunk he is and how he slept with the queen the night before. And how Haman was scheming against him and the Jews. And so the king is super embarrassed and ashamed, and he calls off the genocide and punishes Haman instead. The Jews are saved and they defeat their enemies. And now let's look at the passage. Esther 4:16 says, "Go and gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan. Make no mistake, Haman has plotted to destroy us all, to annihilate us all, little ones and great alike, to wipe out the name of the Jews from the memory of mankind." Let's break this down a bit. Now, if you read through the Old Testament, you see that God repeatedly instructed the Israelites to separate themselves from other nations, to not marry other people of other nations, to not copy their culture, etc. This was called being holy or being set apart. In Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 3, God said, "An Israelite man or woman who commits adultery with someone who is not the Lord's people commits a grievous sin. You must not intermarry with them. Your daughters shall not go into their assembly." Now the reason for this was simple. If the Jews mixed themselves with other nations, they would begin to adopt their ways, their values, their morals, etc. And then they would forget God and start worshiping idols, like everyone else. So God told them, if you want to remain faithful to me, you have to separate yourselves from everyone else. Now, the Jews were commanded to do this for over 2,000 years, and miraculously they remained faithful. They didn't mix in with the surrounding cultures even when they were conquered by the Babylonians and the Persians. However, when Alexander the Great came along, he conquered the Persians, and he loved the Jewish culture and traditions. He actually became friends with some of the Jewish high priests and leaders and respected their God. And after Alexander died, one of his generals, Ptolemy I, took control of the region, and he made Jerusalem part of his empire. Many Jews began to assimilate with Egyptian culture and way of life. By the time of the events in the book of Esther, Jews were allowed to live all over the Persian Empire, which was much more accepting than the Assyrians and Babylonians before them. And so Esther was raised in the city of Shushan, also known as Susa, which was in modern-day Iran. But the Jews living outside of Judah and Israel tended to mix themselves in with the cultures around them. And that's what's happening here in Esther 4 verse 16. The Jews were no longer set apart like they were in the past. They had assimilated into Persian culture and life. And if you read through the book of Esther, you don't see any mention of God or prayer or the temple or sacrifice. But if you read between the lines, it's going to get a sense that these Jews did not follow the laws of Moses. And that's why Mordecai told Esther to reveal herself to King Xerxes. He told her, "Who knows? Perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this," meaning you were raised up and put in this position for such an important moment in history. Esther 2:21-23. Now, although Esther didn't know it at the time, this was exactly true. She was placed in the palace for such a time as this. But back to verse 16. The Jews were no longer separated from the culture around them. They were right in the middle of it. And now Haman wanted to wipe them all out, every last one of them, young and old, big and small babies, children, teenagers, adults, and the elderly. He wanted them all dead. And notice the last part of the verse, to wipe out the name of the Jews from the memory of mankind. That's pretty drastic, isn't it? But this is how bad things had gotten. If the Persians killed all the Jews, no one would ever know that such a group of people existed. Their entire race would be completely wiped off the face of the earth. Now, when you think about this verse, I want you to consider this question. How far can your influence go? How many lives can you affect either positively or negatively? For example, if you're a parent, how much of an impact can you have on your kids' lives? What about a teacher? How about a coach? How about a friend or a coworker or your boss? See, everyone has influence, and everyone affects people whether they realize it or not. And that's exactly what Haman understood. If he could wipe out all the Jews in the empire, their race would die out. No one would remember that such a group of people even existed. So how do you use your influence? Do you use it to help others or hurt them? Do you build up people or tear them down? Do you encourage people or discourage them? Your influence can have a huge impact on people's lives. It may not be on a massive scale like Esther and Haman, where they affected an entire nation and ethnic group, but your influence is real. With great influence comes great responsibility. Okay, let's keep going. Esther 4:17 says, "But Esther told them to reply to Haman, 'The king is hanged, and the queen has cast you and your sons, Haman the Agagite, into the pit for attempting to harm the Jews.'" That's right. Everything worked out perfectly for the Jews. The trap was sprung, and Haman was caught. He tried to trick the king into wiping out the Jews, and he ended up getting himself killed, along with his sons. This is a perfect example of how God works in history. Sometimes he works through natural means. He doesn't directly intervene or part the seas for your benefit. Instead, he gives you the ability to make decisions, and then he works behind the scenes to cause everything to work out according to his plan. For example, Esther decided to reveal herself to the king. Even though she risked her life doing so, it all worked out for the best. Or when Mordecai told Esther to become the queen, it seemed like a crazy idea, but God orchestrated the entire thing and used Esther to save her people. And this is how God works. He'll tell you to do something crazy and scary, and you trust him, and then he causes everything to work out perfectly. Look, there's a lesson in here for all of us. Don't underestimate God and what he can do through you. Now, if you've been following for a while, you know we love to take complex topics and make them easy to understand. So if you'd like to dive deeper into the Bible and learn more about God and his plan for your life, be sure to check out our free ebook, What is the Gospel? It'll show you how to put your faith in Jesus and receive eternal life. Also, if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss future videos where we'll continue to look at the entire Bible verse by verse. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. God's own.